Okay, next maneuver we're going to cover is power on stalls or departure stalls. So this is simulating you just took off and you over pitch the airplane and you hit that critical angle of attack and a stall happens and you got to recover. So this is in the ACS. You will either have to hold a heading within 10 degrees or a specific bank angle that the examiner gives. Obviously usually not a really steep bank angle. But in that case, you wouldn't need to hold a heading. You need to recover with minimum altitude loss. Obviously, this depends on the aircraft that you're using, how quickly they recover from stalls. But the concepts are very similar across the board. So first of all, power on stalls, altitude. You need to be able to complete the whole maneuver above 1,500 feet, AGL, just like slow flight. That being said, you're going to do a stall. So you don't want to be right on the bottom of that once again. So make sure that you have plenty of room to complete the whole maneuver above 1,500 AGL. Clearing turns, you're doing stalls, that's going to really take a lot of your attention. So make sure the area is clear of aircraft and make sure you're not maneuvering over a populated area doing stalls. Check the engine real quick and then you're ready to go. So step one is we are cruising around and we're at 2,300, just cruising. RPMs wise, we're ready to go. Now we have to simulate like we're getting back to the takeoff phase. So we need to slow down to get to a climb out speed. So my recommendation is to do that same slow down like we did in slow flight, which is 1,500 RPM. As you do that, get my plane out. As you do that, once again, the nose wants to come down. So as you throttle back, you're going to slowly increase that pitch so we don't lose altitude while we're slowing down. And then as we get to airspeeds that would simulate departure, which would be climb out speeds, so that'd be VY or VX, either one is acceptable. We don't lose altitude during that transition. Once we get to that climb out speed, we're going to take the carpet off, put the throttle on, and we're going to go full throttle. And we're going to keep pitching up, It doesn't have to be incredibly aggressive, but you want to actually get it to a stalled state. So as we're going up, a major thing you're going to experience with full power, low airspeed, is a lot of those left turning tendencies are going to be very pronounced. So the aircraft is going to want to, if it's taken off this way, it's going to want to roll left. So whenever you're feeling that, if you're just holding heading with like aileron, you could be uncoordinated. So you're gonna have to use some right rudder to bring the ball back in place so that it will be coordinated. So as you're climbing out, be aware of that. You might have to use some other control combinations so that you maintain that heading. As you get close to a stall, you're gonna have several warning signs. So you're gonna have, first of all, a high angle of attack, and you know, that's just, you're seeing a lot more sky than ground pretty much. You're gonna have a slower airspeed. That's pretty obvious too. Then you're gonna have that stall warning horn coming on. So as you see those happening and hear those happening, you know a stall's about to come. So when the stall happens and you start to feel possibly mushy controls, meaning the control surfaces, there's not much air going over the top of them, so they're not very effective. So it feels mushy, like you have a lot of play in the controls that's not doing much. Sometimes there might be a slight buffet right before it stalls, so you feel the air separating off the wingtips here. And then eventually, when it can't create lift anymore, the stall will happen, and that will mean that the aircraft will naturally want to nose down, which is a good thing. We also want to help it in this process, so we make sure we, with the elevator, allow the nose to come down, maybe push a little bit down, and give it full throttle. In this maneuver, we should already be full throttle because it's power on stall. Just make sure it didn't back out or anything. And then as you get enough airflow and airspeed going over your control surfaces, all of a sudden they're effective again. So once you get enough airspeed, 55, 60 knots, start leveling off, because we want to simulate like we just took off and we're close to the ground. So you don't want to just keep on losing a couple hundred more feet of altitude so that you can, for for no reason. So once we have enough to fly, 55, 60 knots, level off, start a climb, not too aggressive, you don't want a secondary stall to happen, but let the aircraft accelerate, let vertical speed, let a little bit of vertical speed happen so that you know you're leaving the ground, and then just continue to climb out. So I'd say the biggest common errors that you see are not keeping the aircraft coordinated. A stall that's uncoordinated can turn into a spin. So obviously we want to avoid that. If it does drop a wing, just know your spin recovery techniques. Rudder is much more critical than aileron, and sometimes putting an aileron to try to roll out of a bank when it's in a stalled state can exaggerate the spin worse. So think rudder if you dip a wing, but if you let the nose down and give it some power, typically that fixes everything, and then enough airspeed, just climb away.